Welcome back to the So You Want to Work in Healthcare podcast. I'm back with Heather Struhl. You know her as Heather the Injector, and we're coming at you with some patient care hour tips to prepare you for PA school, med school, or whatever kind of school you're applying to. So, hey, Heather.
Hey, thanks for having me again.
Of course. I'm excited for this episode because it's probably one of the most common questions I get on Instagram is, how did you get your patient care hours, and can I shadow you? So I'm sure you get the same kind of thing.
All the time.
So I'm excited to get into this real quick. If you haven't left a review, please don't forget to leave a review on whatever listening platform you're listening on. And if you do leave a review, I will shout you out on the next episode. Let's start with our dog just jumped on Heather's lap. Let's start with our... Let's start with our pop medicine moment of the episode. Heather, you want to take it away?
Sure. So this is a MedPage article that came out 2 days ago about intermittent fasting and how it may improve memory, executive function, and that was found in an early trial. So this was really interesting because it found that cognitively normal older adults with insulin resistance were examined, and they showed some improvement in cognitive decline. Now, I don't think this will correlate to the general population necessarily, because I think there is a huge component of the insulin resistance impacting the memory. So it's just really interesting because there are a lot of dietary interventions that can really improve different health outcomes.
Yeah. And I think that's such an important point to drive home, especially with medications these days that are helping us all lose weight, like Ozempic, the dreaded O word. It's such a controversial topic. But what you just said actually reminded me of this article that I just saw today, actually, about how a recent study showed that Alzheimer's patients who took Ozempic for about a year experienced an 18% slower decline in cognitive function compared to those who received a placebo. Now, I did read this from a news article, but apparently it's a Columbia University study, so I'll have to delve into that a little bit more. But on that same note, I want to point out that they're also finding a lot of negative side effects to drugs like Ozempic and Wegovy. And so although they are finding some positive side effects of these GLP-1 agonists, a lot of news articles and studies are starting to come out with potential negative or bad side effects. So definitely talk to your doctor before you start any of these medications. But it is so interesting that it makes sense. Like intermittent fasting, usually people will either, if they're not eating healthier, they're usually eating a little bit less. So to me, it's kind of a similar effect as these weight loss medications because they're helping you eat less. So it's kind of like they're both doing the same thing, right?
Yeah, that's how I view it.
Yeah.
Because there's so many different types of intermittent fasting, whether you're limiting yourself where you can only eat for 12 hours and you're refraining from food for another 12 hours. There's just so many different ways. And some of it is just not eating after 8 p.m. And that will just restrict a lot of snacking, which decreases caloric intake. And a lot of sugary foods tend to be eaten, in the later hours of the evening. So I think they all are kind of doing a similar purpose. There's just different ways about it. And sometimes these medications really are needed.
And as a registered dietitian, can you tell our listeners the cellular function that's happening? Like more on a cellular level, meaning with the whole insulin resistance thing, why does having better levels of glucose and insulin in our bodies help decrease cognitive dysfunction or help improve cognitive function? It has to do with the sugar in our brains, right? Kind of.
There's so many different components to it, which we could go into a crazy long discussion about this, which I think we actually should.
Yeah, I think we should do an episode on Ozempic.
Yeah, this is such a hot topic, but the way that I see it is a lot of things are influenced by, yes, sugar, but also more importantly, weight gain.
Okay.
And for insulin resistance, that's a huge component where if we can just get the weight down, then so many other improvements will be seen. There's microvascular issues and damage from diabetes and a lot of these issues can be reversed when we get the weight off. Our body can produce more insulin effectively. So I think there's a multifaceted approach, but I think that's a big component.
Yeah. And if you're listening and you work in weight loss medicine, like I know a lot of PAs, more and more PAs are delving into that field, definitely comment or write us a message on Instagram and correct us here, because we're definitely just kind of like doing the surface area. Surface
skimming.
Surface skimming of this topic. But yeah, definitely let us know what you're seeing in your practices. So, all right. Now, let's get into the main topic here, which is how to get patient care hours. Obviously, you can go on Google and find a nice list of things to do, but I think that Heather and I will give you a little bit more of a unique or more specific perspective on this. If you Google it, you're going to find basically that it says you should volunteer to get your hours. You could become an EMT. It literally says get a job. But basically like a healthcare role, like a PCA or a nursing assistant, and then also shadowing a physician. Those are the obvious ones, right? So Heather, do you remember what you did to get most of your patient care hours?
So although this was a lifetime ago, yes, I did a couple of things. In high school, I spent a little bit of time in my dad's office. He's a cardiologist, but that wasn't even how I got the bulk of my hours. During my education, so when I was doing my undergrad work at Penn State, I worked in a diet study lab. And we were studying many different things, mainly HDL and that effect on many different aspects of diet and disease. So I worked in this lab for, about, I think, 17 to 20 hours a week for 2.5 years or so. So that was how I got a lot of patient hours. And that was really a huge component of helping me actually get into my dietetic internship. So those hours actually also counted towards what I needed for PA school as a prereq, but then also I did my dietetic internship. So that was full-time for a year. So those were additional hours. And of course, it depends on the program you're applying to for how many hours they want. But that was the main way that I was able to get my hours in. I mean, so many other people will just volunteer. So there's so many different things you can do, but I think it's really interesting to hear what other people do so you can get other ideas. But this was my way of getting a job and also getting a lot of experience at the same time.
It's a pretty unique way, actually. I think I remember this from your episode when I interviewed you for the, your main podcast episode that we did first. But if you're currently, I think this is really important for somebody who's maybe going down one path, but having the thoughts of going to PA school or med school or something and after doing what you're doing. But make sure, I guess, you know that your internship hours can count towards patient care hours. Like, don't forget that. So if you're thinking like, oh, I'm doing this internship and I'm not loving it, or I want to go further with my education, like, know that that's going to help. It's only going to help your resume, basically. It's only going to get you more hours.
Yeah, everything is experience. So I think everything that you do is valuable. So even if you are volunteering or you do get a job, even in a medical office as a scribe, and maybe you decide you don't want to go to medical school anymore, everything is really valuable. Or maybe this leads you in a different path and you get more experience and it can kind of lead you into a different role. And that's actually kind of what happened for me when I was doing my dietetic internship. I had an idea that I wanted to go to PA school, but that really solidified it. So it was while I was doing that, which did count as patient hours for myself, it really helped pave the path and really solidified that I did want to apply to PA school. So everything is an experience, and it's all worth it, I would say.
Yeah, for sure. I think a lot of people will relate to that. Now, for me, I did my patient care hours a couple ways. You said you shadowed your dad, who's a physician, and you had your dietetic internship. Was there anything else you did before I move on to what I did?
No, that was it.
Okay, cool. And how many hours did you have? Do you remember?
I want to say in the diet study lab, that was probably about at least 1,000. It must have been more because I spent a lot of time there. I spent a full summer there full time. And it adds up.
It does. And it's getting the requirements for PA school, at least. I don't know about med school, but for PA school, the requirements for patient care hours just go up and up. I feel like every time I talk to somebody about it. Like back when I was applying, I feel like the standard was 250 to 500 hours. Maybe some schools required 1,000. Now it's like standard that the schools are requiring like 1,500.
Yeah.
Or more.
When I was applying, if I remember correctly, one of the schools wanted about 5,000 hours.
That's a lot.
Something completely unattainable, which really doesn't allow anyone straight from undergraduate to start and go straight through PA school.
Yeah, you basically have to be like working in the healthcare field for a while to get that many hours, unless you're just like working your ass off.
It's about 2,000 hours is working full time for 1 year, I think.
Is it?
I believe so.
Oh, wow.
So to get that done, even as a part-time job in high school and in college, that just takes a long time.
So start now. Even if you're in high school, it's okay. Just start as soon as you can, because you're not going to be wanting to like work your butt off while you're also trying to apply to PA school and get good grades in undergrad and all that. Now, yes, I did the standard volunteering. That was my first set of hours, I guess you should say. But I volunteered in the operating room because I knew I was interested in surgery. So if you're going to take a volunteer job, maybe try to take a job that you are interested in, and where maybe you're going to meet people who will help you get into PA school. So I took I took a volunteer job at my local hospital in the summer. I was a patient transport tech or something. And I don't know if that counts now, but at the time it did, as patient care hours. And I got to meet all the surgeons because I was taking their patient into the OR. And I kind of honed in on the orthopedic surgeons. And that's how I got my first shadowing hours.
Oh, wow.
I basically just like made connections in the OR. I met the orthopedic PA. There were like one or two of them at the time in this small hospital. I met a couple of the surgeons. They were super cool, and they just like would let me pop into surgeries whenever I wanted. And so I got to see my first orthopedic surgery ever there. Random fact, the first one I ever saw was with one of my dad's like buddies from college who just happened to be a surgeon at this hospital.
Oh, that's so funny.
Yeah, and I've never been so excited. Like the first surgery I saw was a hip replacement. I think I like ran down the hall and like clicked my heels. I was so excited afterwards. But I think my point here is like, of course, you can and should volunteer to get your hours, but make the most of it. Don't just like get a volunteer job where you're just like, going through the motions. And if that's all you can get, fine, but make a connection, because those connections helped me get into PA school.
That's great. I mean, that's like a form of networking essentially, and you meet so many people, and that's, how you can find, whether it's your next volunteer job or paid job, or maybe this person becomes a mentor to you, helps you get into school.
Right, exactly. And it then let me shadow and see things I wanted to see. And those people wrote some of my letters for PA school.
Oh, wow.
It was awesome. Now, the second thing I did, which is, I haven't really heard too many other people do this, but every college that has sports should have a athletic training assistant position. Obviously, double check with the school that you're applying to. Like you can, I don't know if you guys know this, but you can call any like admissions office to a PA school or med school, and they should tell you what they're looking for. Even if you've already applied, you could say, where did I go wrong with my resume? How can I make it better? And they'll tell you what they need. So my point here is, if the schools you're applying to will accept these hours as an athletic trainer assistant, then this was like the best job ever, because I got paid like a student wage, but I also got like 1,500 care hours because I did it for like 2.5 years straight at school.
Oh, wow. That's awesome.
Yeah. So I got paid to do it, and it counted as my patient care hours, and it was fun. I got to work with athletes. I got to learn how to like tape ankles and take care of injuries, and I got to see the whole sports kind of orthopedic side in a way, which I was already very interested in. I got to take care of patients. I would do ultrasound treatments and, heating, icing, massage, things like that. I got to be on the field at sport sports games, which was really cool. And I met like one of my best friends doing that job. So it was like a win-win-win all around. And I highly suggest, if your college has these positions available, apply. And if they don't list it as available, just go ask if they need an assistant. And you might not get paid for it, but you can do it as a volunteer job. Like, you can create your own volunteer jobs.
And I think a couple people in my PA class did the same thing.
Oh, really?
And they had super strong foundations in orthopedics going in.
Yeah.
They learned a lot.
Yeah, it was awesome. Athletic trainers can be really, really insightful and like super smart.
And also super fun.
Yeah, super fun. It was great. The rest of my hours just came from shadowing. And here's what I want to say about this. So yes, I met a few of the people that I shadowed at my OR volunteer job, my patient care, my patient transport job. But I wanted to see more, and I wanted more hours. I literally walked into offices and told them who I was and was like, can I shadow the doctor? And almost every office said yes. Like, my point here is that you need to show up in person. And I know it was hard during COVID, and I'm sorry for those of you who may have reached out to me. Like, I'm pretty limited in what I can do at my hospital shadowing wise. But now that COVID's over, like, go in person, show your face, because these people are probably getting emails and calls all the time, and they have no idea who anybody is. And if they forget about you, go back. I had to go back to an office like 2 or 3 times until I saw the doctor. And as soon as I met the doctor, he was like, oh, of course you can shadow me.
I agree. And that's so much better than yes, email or just mailing in your resume. But also, if you get a second to introduce yourself, let them meet you face to face. I think that's going to make such a difference. That also goes for applying for jobs.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're just going to walk into a place that you're really interested in, I remember at my first job, someone just dropped off their resume and kind of just left immediately. It was very cold. Didn't seem like they were truly interested.
Right.
Like they just wanted any job. Yeah. So just think about how that comes across and just make yourself seem personable. That's how I see it.
Insider tip. Always be nice to and make friends with the front desk people, because they are like the bodyguards of the office.
Oh, yeah. They control everything that enters the office.
Oh, yeah.
And they will look out for you if you make a really nice impression.
For sure. Oh my gosh, I can't stress that enough. And the last thing I want to add is, a lot of people will write to me saying, I don't know anybody in medicine. I don't have anybody to shadow. I don't know any PAs. I find that hard to believe. You may not know a PA, but somebody you know knows a PA at this point. There's too many of us to not. So you might not even realize that people around you know PAs. So if you're in high school or college and, you know, your parents want to help you out, and if you're a parent listening to this podcast, which I definitely think you should, because you can help guide your children on how to get into PA school, ask your parents' friends, ask your parents to ask their friends. Go to the doctor for your physical and ask them. Or like, I don't know, maybe you have a cousin who has a friend. And a lot of it is like who you know. When you know somebody, they're more likely to go out of their way for you.
Absolutely. Also, I think Instagram is a really important tool, and a lot of people make friends over Instagram. And I know some PAs that I haven't even met in person, but we became friendly over Instagram. We message. One girl messaged me because her name is Heather also. And we just started chatting, and she's super awesome. She lives in the Midwest. And this was someone that wanted to shadow with me but doesn't live in New York. So that didn't work out. But there are other ways to make connections. So just trying to be a little creative, I think, can help.
Yeah. And I think getting to know someone on the internet is totally possible. I've made friends through TikTok, you know, like good friends.
Yeah.
Sending a message being like, hi, I'd like to shadow you, and then never following up. That's not really the way, I don't think, to get people to let you shadow, in my opinion. Maybe like form a relationship with that person first, rather than just sending a generic message that I know you're sending to like 1,000 other people.
Right. Make it personable. Yeah. Why you want to shadow with this person in particular.
Right. All right. So in conclusion, real fast, you can obviously volunteer. Maybe if you're volunteering, try to do something you're interested in and make the most of it. I did not do EMT, but I think that is a wonderful, wonderful way to get not just hours, but like true emergency experience. You can take a different path before PA school like Heather did and get a lot of hours through something like an internship. You can also work at the training room, the athletic training room at your college. And you can show up and show your face and get some shadowing hours with a doctor that you have met before, maybe never met. Just walk into the office and just show up and just do it. I guarantee you somebody will say yes.
Show some interest.
Show some interest. Thank you so much for listening, and we will see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.
This is the So You Want to Work in Healthcare podcast with new episodes every month. Don't forget to subscribe to stay up to date on the latest releases.